Just as the Cardinals were trying to climb back into the wild card conversation, they drop a tough one on Monday in Seattle. We'll talk about that sixth inning moment where everything went awry for the Cardinals coming up on B-Schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. Cardinals take the loss 4-2 on Monday night in Seattle, and it just seems like this Cardinals team, it'll take a couple of steps forward, and then it's one or two steps back to follow that up, and that's how Monday felt for the Cardinals as they had a 2-0 lead. Alec Burleson returning from the injured list, hitting a 2-run homer to give the Cardinals that lead over Bryan Woo and the Seattle Mariners. But Woo's a good pitcher, Mariners with a solid bullpen, and they didn't give up anything more. The Cardinals' scoring was capped right there at 2, and unfortunately, the Mariners had a sixth inning that bested it. With 4 runs scored against Miles Mikolas and Gordon Graceffo, Cardinals lose at 4-2. So what happened in that situation for the Cardinals? You had a good start brewing for Miles Mikolas. Honestly, I went back and looked, and it was his best road start that we've seen from him since sometime in June, because he just hasn't been very good on the road this year. ERA well above 6 on the road. I know some Cardinals fans, most Cardinals fans, are sort of just ready for the Mikolas era to end because we know the contract is expiring at the end of the season. Cardinals aren't going to bring him back. I would be very surprised to see that. Although he has said he would like to continue pitching and believes he's got more to give, more to offer. But I also think to some extent we've kind of seen what Miles Mikolas has, and that's sort of very back end of the rotation type of stuff. His ERA is 4.84. I'm not saying there wouldn't be a team in MLB that would take some interest in maybe the known quantity, right, of the rotation depth that Mikolas can provide. But he's really a number 5, and I don't know if he's that for a true contender. So we'll see what becomes of Miles Mikolas moving forward. But he pitched pretty well yesterday. Only gave up 4 hits, couple of runs. He was charged in the beginning portion of that sixth inning. He had a leadoff walk in the sixth and then gave up a base hit. And then from there, it was Gordon Graceffo's game. And unfortunately, Graceffo didn't have his best showing. Walked the first man that he faced, ended up giving up a hit and then a long hit to the wall by Josh Naylor, which contributed to the scoring in that frame for the Mariners. And then it was a sacrifice fly to finish off the inning. I thought that was an interesting spot. It was obviously the key spot of the game for the Cardinals. But as we continue to wind down 2025, we look more ahead to implications for 2026 and beyond. And I certainly think that's where the Cardinals were with Gordon Graceffo last night. Now, I'm not saying that Oliver Marmol was holding something back to try to get a runway for Graceffo. He would be trying to win the game in whatever capacity the Cardinals manager was able to do. But I also think when you look at the state of the Cardinal bullpen, it's obviously not the same unit that we had seen to begin the season or even by the middle of the year. Things changed at the trade deadline. You're dealing with some attrition here and there. And I think when you just look at the options from last night, it was fine to have Gordon Graceffo in that game. I don't really know that there was an obvious better choice, especially with it being the sixth inning. And so you're thinking, okay, could Graceffo be a guy that gives you the sixth and the seventh? Are you able to get a little bit more out of him? It becomes a little less about lining up your relievers 7, 8, 9. It's not to say that Oli Marmol wouldn't still do that and have his late inning leverage guys available when they are available. But I also think you see guys taking games in chunks a little bit more often. We've seen that from Kyle Leahy, which is why I would imagine he probably wasn't available on Monday night, having pitched 2 innings on Saturday. Prior to that, he had pitched 2 innings on Wednesday, and so when he goes multiples, the trend has sort of been 2 days off, and then he can give you a couple of innings, and it's not the traditional look to a bullpen that you'd have if you were, say, contending right now for a divisional lead or something of that ilk, but the Cardinals right on the periphery, still of the wild card conversation. We know it's not very realistic. They'd have to rattle off, they've climbed the mountain to get back to 500. Now they're a game below with Matthew Liberatore taking the mound on Tuesday night going up against George Kirby. Maybe they can get back to 500 at that point. But it seems like you win a series or two, you climb back to that level, but there's just no staying power or momentum that can propel you beyond it this year if you're the Cardinals. What you would need is to scratch out a couple of series wins, get to 500, and then just win for a week straight, like 7 in a row, rattle them off, and then maybe we can have a conversation and see where you're at. Now, it's helpful, I guess, if you're still thinking about wild card stuff, that a team like the Mets has not run away with it by any stretch of the imagination. The Padres and Cubs are both pretty safe in a playoff spot. The Mets would be the one team, and they did lose as well on Monday. So the Cardinals still, as we talk here, 4.5 games behind New York. But that would have to be just a turbocharged win 7 in a row, try to shake teams like the Reds and the Giants and the Diamondbacks, who are all in the midst right next to the Cardinals as well, before you can even thinking about catching the Mets. That's the problem, is the Cardinals just haven't been able to find that additional gear. It's not that they're managing it in a way that doesn't value the win, but I think with where the Cardinals are at right now, knowing the state of the bullpen is, kind of a trial for some guys in 2026. Like, for example, Jorge Alcala has been looking pretty good, throwing 99, 100 at times with his fastball. Could he be somebody that they could, morph and mold into a role for next year's bullpen? Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. He might have been a nice diamond in the rough type of pickup a number of weeks back. Otherwise, you're kind of just in that midst of seeing what guys are capable of doing and how they respond to a situation when challenged. My assumption being that, and I wrote about this for STLSportsCentral.com, that Kyle Leahy was not probably due to pitch in Monday's game, meant that Gordon Graceffo was an interesting candidate. I know he doesn't have great numbers this season, and after last night's game, his ERA for the Cardinals in 22 appearances, a total of 39 innings, is 5.77. And I think we probably had more hopes for Gordon Graceffo in this kind of his first year shifting primarily from starter to relief duties. That's been largely the case both in the minors with Memphis, where he's carried a 3.77 ERA, and up in St. Louis, where he's carried the 5.77 ERA. He's been a reliever this year and has totaled 84 and a third innings between AAA and St. Louis. Just getting a look at how his stuff plays out of the bullpen. I do wonder if the Cardinals would throw him back into the starter conversation heading into 2026, especially if there happens to be some momentum toward a Sonny Gray trade. Like, he would have to approve that. I feel bad kind of talking about every possibility because it makes it seem like I think the Cardinals need to get rid of like 25 of 26 guys on their team. It's not really the way I feel, but I'm sort of operating in this mode of understanding, ownership probably isn't really making a push to have 2026 be the year where they spend big again, and they're looking at the holes on their roster and going out and filling them via free agency and, doing anything other than kind of a bargain barrel type of shopping spree. And with that being the case, you could understand why it might make sense to reset some other positions, whether it's Sonny Gray's spot in the rotation at $35 million for the final season. Could you find a way to get out from under some of that money, maybe get a prospect in the meantime? Could make the same case with Nolan Arenado, depending on what his value ends up being. Honestly, from like a team level perspective where you have an Alec Burleson and maybe even like a Ivan Herrera that you're kind of trying to figure out where to place those guys that you want them in your lineup next year, but where and positionally where is kind of a question still. It would make sense to explore Wilson Contreras from that standpoint, but I also think there's value to having good veterans with energy and with clubhouse presence like Wilson Contreras that I'd like to see him stay around with the Cardinals. And he's got the say in that, of course, because of the no trade clause, and he should be back in that Cardinal lineup for Tuesday night. I'm recording this on Tuesday afternoon. I can check and see if there's been a lineup. Of course, though, it's a late game, which is why maybe I'll get a few people to tune in for this, even though my posting schedule has been nightmarish. Don't know if everybody saw, but I can talk about it now that my wife has posted on Facebook. We are welcoming baby number 2 in January, so maybe that can cut me a little bit of slack for the abysmal posting schedule. Just got a lot going on this month, but I tell you what, we get to October, I feel like I'm going to be reinvigorated a little bit by talking Cardinal baseball because, and I talked about this, with Randy Carricker this morning on STL Sports Central. I do the Randy Carricker Show with Randy every Tuesday. You can check that out on the STL Sports Central YouTube channel, 10 a.m. on Tuesdays. And we spent an hour and a half talking Cardinals today. And I feel like it was some of the better conversation from like a high-level view of what's coming for this team. And it just feels like we're waiting out the clock a little bit on 2025, and it's almost like disrespectful to have those types of conversations and gloss over what's happening in the now. But I also think many Cardinals fans are ready for that type of talk too. And I don't see a Cardinal lineup just yet posted as I am recording this on Tuesday afternoon. But that's where it gets a little bit tricky right now to be doing daily shows. Is it feels like we'll be talking about the same stuff, and it almost serves to gloss over what's happening in the games. So when I saw last night's game, and I thought, the Graceffo thing, in a different month of the season, you might have been feeling, or if the record were different today, you might have been feeling, was Graceffo with a 5.7, 5.5 ERA, whatever it was, the best choice for that key spot in the sixth inning? And I would contend that, maybe in a different situation, he wouldn't have been. But when you look at what they have and you look at what they're trying to figure out, wouldn't you like to know how a Gordon Graceffo responds to a situation like that? And you're kind of thinking forward to getting him reps for what a role in 2026 could look like. The word runway is overplayed at this point, of course. We're all tired of hearing it, and I'm tired of using it. But I also thought, that's kind of what this is about, right? How does a pitching prospect who has graduated to MLB contributor, Gordon Graceffo, how is he going to respond when it's the big dumper and it's, the middle of that Mariners lineup coming up? How does he respond with the game on the line? Unfortunately, he wasn't able to, get the jam cleared for Miles Mikolas, and it ends up going the way that it goes in that sixth inning. The Mariners score 4 runs. Cardinals offense is never heard from again. They lose 4-2 instead of being a game above 500 and going, hey, by the way, 3.5 back of the Mets. We're talking about a game below 500, still 4.5 back, and it just doesn't feel there's nothing about this team right now that screams playoff worthy or the fact that they're in a playoff race. And I still will say they're not in one. But if they win 2 games in a row and the Mets lose 2 more, you'd be hard-pressed to say they wouldn't be in a race at 2.5 games back, right? So they're on the periphery, but it just seems like every time they have a chance to make a move, you fall a little bit short of doing that. And maybe that reaction from some people would be, well, yeah, that's why I'm upset about the Graceffo, because couldn't you have thrown your best option, whoever that might have been? Couldn't you try to stretch a Leahy to get back after only 1 day of rest? Couldn't you try to do this, that, or the other? And you can, but it's also like when you're, what's the record, 71-71? Was that the record going into yesterday? Shoot, I should have been able to do that a lot more smoothly than I have been able to do. But I thought my MLB TV that I had pulled up watching some highlights from last night was going to give me more than it gave me. So there you go, 72-73. Excuse me. So I thought it was 71-71, losing track of the games. 72-73 now after last night's loss. They've already won more games than they did in 2023. Is the point I'm trying to make. Like, this year's team, probably not playoff bound. Almost definitely not playoff bound. Not a bad team or a terrible team. And frankly, I've heard some of this sentiment from around town, and I agree with it, that for all the attrition, you look at their lineup on a daily basis, it's about to get better. With Donovan starting a rehab in Springfield on Tuesday night, Arenado on Wednesday night. We'll try to get back to you on Wednesday with some down on the farm action and tell you about how that went for Brendan Donovan. You've got Liam Doyle joining the Springfield Cardinals, might make an appearance as they're kind of pushing for the playoffs. Their schedule is still extended beyond what Palm Beach could have offered him. I believe that's where Liam Doyle went previously. And the fact that they're like, yeah, we're going to maybe throw him an inning or two at Double-A and just kind of get a look, even though that's technically skips a level from Peoria. They're just trying to get another touch for Liam Doyle. Like, there are definitely exciting things happening for the Cardinals. It's just a situation now where you have to kind of make a big move with a roster that's about halfway full, and we'll see, we'll see. I would not say the Cardinals have no ability to finish the season with pride, but it feels like they're a magnet to 81 wins right now. 80 to 82 is going to be where they fall. And it would be great to see, Matthew Liberatore Tuesday night picking up where he left off in his start against the Athletics. Find a way, get a win, and then you go for a series win on Wednesday against Seattle. And next thing you know, you're like, okay, Cardinals are actually starting to stack some series wins. They're above 500. It's just every time they have had that chance to kind of squeak above 500 and then see what they can do from there, they just have not been able to get that to materialize. So that's why I feel like we continue to be in talking about next year mode. Let me know what mode you want from your Cardinals content right now. Do you want to just talk about next year? Or are you thinking more in the category of, dude, 4.5 games, crazier things have happened? I will say, man, surprising the Cardinals are where they are in the standings. I'm saying that in a good way. Like with the attrition, with the situation being what it is, the sort of malaise of an outgoing front office and sort of a lame duck spot. I think Oli Marmol's done a really good job to get as many wins out of this team as he has and as the Cardinals have picked up right now. I think if you look at, I know this was the case recently, the run differential stuff, it's kind of like, what we saw last year where they outperformed, honestly, what their run differential was. They're a minus 42 right now in run differential. Teams worse than that in the National League, the Pirates, the Marlins, the Nationals, and the Rockies. That's it. Cardinals have a much better record than the Braves, and the Braves have a much, not a much better, but they have a better run differential. Braves have a minus 33. The Cardinals are minus 42. But the Cardinals lead the Braves by 6.5 in the standings. The teams right around the Cardinals in the standings that they're trying to find a way to catch some helium and pass, they're a half game behind the Reds as I record this, and the Reds have a run differential of plus 29. That's a plus 71 difference compared to the Cardinals, who are minus 42. They have the same record virtually. Cardinals a half game behind. You could talk about the Diamondbacks, same thing. Cardinals have an identical record to Arizona. Arizona's a plus 19. Cardinals are a minus 42. It's a 61 run differential compared to the Diamondbacks. And the Giants, the Cardinals are a game and a half back of them as of the moment, but they have a plus 32. Cardinals are minus 42, 74 run difference. So the teams right around the Cardinals in the standings, their run differential, and that's not the end-all, be-all, but how many runs did you score? How many did you give up? If it feels like the Cardinals season is worse than it is, maybe that's why, because obviously they're getting beat up a little bit more in the games that they do lose on average to be a minus 42, and the wins seem like they have to do just about everything right and play perfect baseball to win. Maybe that's an oversimplification of it, but I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily far off. I think different times are coming for the St. Louis Cardinals, and I'll be excited to walk through them with you and talk about them with you and write about them for you to read at STLSportsCentral.com. I did write up a little bit of what we talked about today in the Graceffo stuff and how I think growing pains are going to be necessary for this Cardinal team. Unfortunately, they happen on Monday night. You wish they didn't, because I think it would take only just one or two more wins in a row, losses by the Mets, to be able to peak up and see 2.5, maybe 3 game deficit and be talking about things a little bit differently. Even if it's not realistic, it still could be fun to do. The Cardinals on paper just don't look like a team that should be where they are, but they're still hanging around there. I am not telling you the Cardinals are going to make the playoffs, but I am telling you that they're playing for maybe more than just a little bit of pride at the end of the season. We'll see. I'd like to see Matthew Liberatore shove it tonight and maybe come back tomorrow and talk about a 500 team that could be looking for another series win. And who knows? Keep monitoring the Mets. Maybe the Ryan Helsley sleeper agent act could keep helping the Cardinals out. Mets have lost 3 in a row. They're at Philadelphia this week, and they've got 3 more against Philly, taking on Ranger Suarez tonight. They could very well lose these next 3 games, guys. I think we could look back at that Mariners loss on Monday for the Cardinals and go, man, just imagine if things had been different, how we could be viewing things after Thursday, because Cardinals don't play Thursday. If the Mets lose 3 and the Cardinals still win this series, Cardinals will be, the Mets might not even be the team that's in the spot at that point, but I don't know. I don't think it's crazy. Maybe it's some of the Mizzou hopium, the helium that's going to my brain from that team and how excited I was for the Tigers on Saturday. Maybe that's bleeding into the way I think about the Cardinals, but I think there's like zero pressure right now and zero angst about it when you're a Cardinals fan to just see if the team can maybe finish on a strong note. And, who knows? Stranger things have happened. Let me know how you're viewing the Cardinals and how you viewed that tough 6th inning last night as they fell to the Mariners, 4-2. That'll do it for this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.